Hey guys, welcome to the video. We got some bad news. The APB is out of order. We got all sorts of issues going on with it. Steering intermittently not working, graphic glitches all over the place, and it seems to get worse as it warms up. We're going to get the game pulled away from the wall, and we're going to start with checking voltages and see where that takes us. See if we can find out if this is going to be an easy fix or not. Before we get into it, I'd like to tell you, once you're done watching the video, please like, subscribe, and comment. I do appreciate you guys, and I hope to hear from you. All right, well, let's jump into it. Let's start by getting this game pulled away from the wall. I'll be right back. All right, guys, got the APB pulled away from the wall, and wouldn't you know it, everything's working exactly like it's supposed to. But isn't that the way it always works? It's intermittent, so sometimes it's having issues, sometimes it isn't. So we're going to check voltages, probably reset some of the edge connectors. But before we get into that, one thing I did want to do is just put it into test mode and see if anything came up on that. We do that by, I opened up the coin door here, and right back here on the audio PCB, there's a little switch here, and a little test mode switch, and we're just going to push that back. So now we're in test mode. Let's come back up here. And there we go, we got a menu. So I'm gonna put this on the tripod here, and we're gonna take a look through the menu and see what we can't figure out. All right, guys, we got our test menu here. We got some different stuff: reset, statistics, report, our test stuff, development only. We probably don't wanna mess with that stuff, and then demo. Let's jump right into the ROM program. Let's test this. See what it comes back as. Looks like everything came back as okay. Okay. Let's do the alphanumeric test. What do we got here? Alphanumeric ROM test. Yeah, all the letters in uppercase and lowercase and the various colors and flashing. Everything looks good there. So I think we're good. Motion object. Let's see what this one is. Motion object test, siren and wheel. Okay, it's like, what do we got going here? Showing all the different objects and how they appear. Oh, it's showing like all the various colors of the different objects in the game. Appears everything's fine. Doesn't seem to be an issue with any particular objects. It seems to be yeah, it seems to be more like throughout the entire game, you know, issues that are getting affected. So we're going to back out of here. It says I hit the pedal. ROM playfield. PF ROM test. Oop. Kind of testing some of the different graphics. All looks fine to me. Not noticing anything weird there. So let's back out here and then RAM all. To test all RAM, do a reset. And actually, when this boots up, I saw that those were okay. So nothing in here that's like the smoking gun. Let's go ahead and go back and test some voltages and go from there. You know, I'm wondering though that if the voltages are going to come back fine for the moment, just because we're not seeing any issues with the game. But let's back out of test mode here. We'll come back to the colors later, but for now, let's go check out some voltages. Okay, I'll be right back. All right, guys, we got the back off here. We're looking at the switching power supply. Got my multimeter in hand. Got it set to measure DC voltage. Let's find a good place to set this. You guys see it there? Yeah, okay. A couple things before we get started. The blue and the white cables down here on this power supply, and I have the game off right now, unplugged. Those are ACN, so this is dangerous current. You definitely do not want to touch. Don't do this if you don't feel comfortable doing it, and make sure that you know what you're doing before you start messing around with that stuff. But we do not want to touch these while we have the game on. On this one, the top is the 12 volt. The second one is the -5. Then we got a couple grounds, and then we have the +5 down below. And as we move this knob here, your goal is to adjust the +5 up and down, and the 12 volt and the -5 just kind of go along with it. So they should be relatively close to what you're doing when you're adjusting the 5 volt. But let's go ahead and get this thing measured. Let's turn the game on. Let's come in here first. We're gonna the third one down here is a ground, so we're going to touch that with our black lead, and then we're going to touch, this game doesn't have 12 volt or -5 volt. It's not making use of those terminals. Those things are just grounding them out. But let's go ahead and measure them anyways. So we'll start with the 12. We can see that we're coming in at 12.79. Let's go down to the -5. Pretty darn close, -5.070. And now we're going to come down to the +5. See if I can hold this and get my arm out of the way. We're pretty close too, 5.1. So we know for the moment being the power supply seems to be working like it's supposed to, but I don't trust this one. There's a sticker on it. This is an old one. Last time it was installed and serviced was back in '94, so it's been 26 years, and I'm gonna get a new one in here, which I ordered. It's a HAP power supply, just waiting for it to come in the mail. So let's go ahead, and since we know, and my problems are intermittent on this game, so sometimes I'm having problems, sometimes I'm not. I just suspect it's a voltage issue, so yeah, let's go ahead and measure. I'm going to show you guys here really quick too how to measure on the PCB, just to see if we're getting similar voltages on the PCB. So yeah, okay, I'll be back here in just a second and we'll measure the PCB. Okay, let's see if I can. I don't really have a good place to set the multimeter, so I'm going to try to hold it. I'm just going to take my black and I'm just going to push it into the corner of the cage here. And then I'm going to take my red one and I'm just going to touch the corner of one of these chips. And you can see that the voltage is holding relatively steady. We could turn up the power supply a little bit if we wanted to. We're at 4.9. But I'm not going to on this one just because I have a new one that I have ordered, and we'll get that one all dialed in when we get it. Depending on your PCB too, you might have like a test point, a couple test points on it. This particular one, so I still have my black lead into the cage frame. I'm trying to hold the multimeter here so you can see it. And then right up top here is a 5 volt test spot. And we can see that we're, same thing, 4.904. So we're pretty darn close to 5 volts. So right now we're not gonna mess with this one because we do have the new power supply coming in, and no matter what the problem is, we're going to get that replaced. But let's go ahead and take the cage off and see if we notice anything with the edge connectors or anything on the PCB that we need to look at. Okay, I'll be right back. Alright guys, I got the cage off and exposed the bottom PCB, and look what we found. Yeah, a toasted filter. You can see it looked like it toasted before, and somebody looks like they've done some repair work right there to kind of bridge a couple of those traces together. But I suspect this is most likely what's causing our issue. Yeah, we need to pull this off and get it cleaned up. Let's pull this bottom PCB off. I'll get it over to my workbench. We'll take a look at it. And then we'll get it cleaned up. Here's the crazy thing. I thought there was no way I was going to find one of these filters out there. After doing some research, I found out that most people just bypass the filter. They just take it straight from the power supply right into the board. But I was doing some looking around and I actually found a guy that had some of these, so I bought them up. And I'm going to, they're in the mail right now, so as soon as I get them, I'm going to get that replaced. But in the meantime, we're going to do a couple things. I did get my power supply, the new one that I ordered, so we're going to get that replaced today. And we're going to get this bottom PCB off and inspect it. So let me get this thing pulled out of the cabinet, get it over to my workbench, and we will be right back. Okay guys, got the bottom board pulled out here and got it over to my workbench. And you can see right there, that pin is all kind of like burnt and corroded up. So we're gonna clean that with these alcohol swabs here. Just something I happen to have on hand that we're gonna try and see if it cleans it up. When I looked at the back of the board, I noticed that everything looked okay. So I think we're all right. We'll get that cleaned up. We'll get the board reinstalled in the game, and then we will wait for the filter and see if that fixes it. But let's go ahead and get this cleaned up really quick with the alcohol swab and see what that does. All right, guys, I was able to get it pretty cleaned up with the alcohol pad, and then I also just used like a really fine steel wool and kind of put it in there like floss and just rubbed it back and forth and got some of the black stuff off. And then just went back over it one more time with the alcohol swab. But I think it came out pretty good. Got it as clean as I think I can get it. Now we're going to get the board back in the game. All right, we'll be right back. All right, guys, here's the power supply, brand new. Here are the feet for it. Let's set those aside. This is a Suzo Hap. This is like the brand name, a little bit better quality. I wanted to get this one instead of buying one of the super cheap ones. Just wanted to make sure it's going to last me for years to come. This one cost me like 35 bucks shipped to my door, versus the really cheap ones were maybe like in the low 20s. But let's go ahead and get this installed in the cabinet. We're going to hook up just the AC. We're going to test the 5 volt before we hook the game into it, because we don't want to fry our boards. We want to make sure that that's dialed in. So I'll be right back. I'll get this hooked up, and then I'll be right back and we'll get it all tested out. All right, guys, here's the new power supply. Got it all hooked up. Got the AC coming in here, and then I got my 12 and my -5 grounded out. So we're just going to test the 5 volt before we hook it up to the board to make sure it's not coming in anything too crazy and end up frying the board. Got my multimeter here. We got it set to measure DC volts. Going to set it right back here, I think is a good spot for you guys to see. And then once the game's on, just be careful. You don't want to put your hand down here or touch anything to do with the AC wires. So we're just measuring the 5 volt and then going to dial it in accordingly. So, okay, let's go ahead and flip on the game here. Give it a second or so to get powered up. What we're going to test here is the 5 volt. And on this one, the 5 volt is the top plug, and the ground, there's a ground right below it. So we're going to stick black in the ground and the red in the 5 volt. And we can see that we're coming in at 5.056, so really darn close to 5 volt. So we're not going to mess with it at all, 5.055. If you needed to, though, you could turn the game off and then, make sure no power's coming in, and you could dial the voltage back and forth as necessary. So, okay, now that we got, or that we verified that the voltage is good, let's go ahead and get the rest of the wires hooked up to the PCB, and we will be back here in just a second. Alright guys, got the rest of the wire harness hooked up there, got the voltage tested, everything's looking good. Got the game turned on right now. We got the new filter in here. Everything's looking good with that. It does fit a little tighter than you would think. Just an FYI, if you're hooking one of those up, a little snugger than you would think it would. It's a really tight fit on the top here, like where the white is right here. It's a really tight fit, but it works. It fits. It's just tight. So Anyways, let's do this. Let's go ahead and test the voltage one more time on the board. We got our ground right here, and then our 5 volt. Let me get a better... right up top there. So let's go ahead and test this. Alright, I'm just going to put my black lead on the ground. See if you guys can see this here. Try to do everything at once. Yeah, there you go. And then we're going to touch the 5 volts up there, and we can see we're coming in at 4.995. Really close. Alright, let's get the PCB cage back on the PCB, and most importantly, let's go enjoy our game and test it out and see if it's all working like we think it is going to be. Alright guys, good news and bad news. The good news is we got the game fixed. It's working like it's supposed to now. Bad news is it was none of the stuff that I thought it was, so that was kind of frustrating. I ended up taking off the CPU board, and there's like a foam pad behind it, and the foam pad was like stuck to the back of the board. It took a while. I got all the foam off, got the board cleaned up. I'm sure that was causing some issues. And then on top of that, it was this chip right here. It's called a LETA chip. I got a new one from Vector Labs. Here's the old one right here. They just go bad. It's a common chip that goes bad in these boards, and so got the new one. Cost me $50, and the game, at least for the few times I've tried it, is now working great. So let's jump around front of the game and get it booted up and see if we're having any issues. Alright guys, we got a lot of stuff done. We got the power supply replaced, we got the new old stock filters that we found, we got one of those in, and neither of those ended up being the fix for this game, which was kind of a bummer. So the good news is though that we figured out what it was. It was a combination of the LETA chip, which is a really common failure on these CPU boards. I was able to get a new one from Vector Labs. I paid $50 for it, and they were easy to work with and got it to me really quick. And then on top of that, that foam pad that's meant to be a spacer between the CPU PCB and the cabinet was like melted and stuck to the back of the CPU PCB, which wasn't a good thing. So I was able to get all that cleaned off with rubbing alcohol, which I'm sure that helped as well. The game was doing really weird things. It was rebooting, it was graphic glitching, the steering wasn't working. But I've had it on for a while now, and I've rebooted it a few times, and everything seems to be working like it's supposed to. So let's keep our fingers crossed that this will continue to run for days and weeks and months and hopefully years to come. Well, thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Check out some of my other videos if you're into arcades, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Have a good one.